And I'm Lenny Kluge.
We're two immigrants living in Chile, bringing you information on news, cultural topics, travel, business, and more.
The Chile Today podcast is the first ever bi-weekly English news podcast.
For more information about the news topics you will hear today, check out our news affiliate, chiletoday.cl.
If you have any questions, stories to share, or just want to say hi, message us on Instagram at Chile Today Podcast or email us at chiletodaypodcast@gmail.com.
If you're feeling generous, rate and review us so that more people can find our podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Chile Today podcast. I'm Lenny and right across from me is Pinguino. And guess who's missing here? It's Bethany. She's not here and I'm not Bethany either. I'm not, because you might have thought maybe I'm Bethany that has undergone hormone therapy, but no, that is not the case. Bethany is not here because she is right now traveling. She is living the high life in Disney World. And she's coming back soon. Might have some news for us. Who knows? Maybe, maybe not. She might have some news. So we'll see about that. But as for now, it's up to the two of us to just give you the news. And let's get to it because we have a lot of news today. We got a lot of news. But first and foremost, let's talk about upcoming events. How about that?
We have April events. The first one is April 7th.
That is correct.
And we have a horrible movie night, another one of those. I love those horrible movie nights. I actually get to help pick the movie. This time, since,
That's why they're so horrible.
Thank you. I have a film degree that says otherwise.
But that was a compliment, I guess.
Sure. Where was I? Oh, yeah, the movie. Horrible movie. It's
We're off to a great start, everybody.
we are watching, it's April, Easter weekend.
Yeah.
The death of Jesus Christ and his resurrection. So we're watching Hamlet 2, which, for those who don't know, it's a movie about a high school drama teacher who decides to make a sequel to Hamlet, where Jesus saves Hamlet from the ending of his own play.
Oh boy, that sounds like something I need to watch.
It is horribly bad. It involves the song "Rock Me, Sexy Jesus."
Is it an iteration of Rock Me Amadeus? Or
I have no idea.
I mean, what?
Maybe, yeah, probably. It's probably sort of like a... Yeah. So, yeah, come see. It'll be fun. Enjoy watching Hamlet 2. It's actually a really good movie. I actually really like it. It's really dumb, but it's just...
It's chef's kiss.
Exactly.
Chef's kiss. All right.
Well, guys, you've heard it here first. Come on April 7th to the Black Rock Pub as usual. Usually starts at around 8 o'clock. We'll be posting something up on the page, or just follow the Chistolas. We've told you a couple of times you should do this by now. And check it out for yourself. Next event that we have coming up is on April 30th, the last day of the month. Another comedy show, bilingual comedy show at the Fiddler's Irish Pub next to Metro Station Manuel Montt. Also starts around 8 if nothing changes until then. That has already been posted, so y'all should really come and check this out. We have great comedians. It's going to be bilingual, and it's not costing a lot. It's less than a movie ticket, so just might as well just come in there and check us out.
And we actually do the stand-up show on the third floor, which is open.
Yes.
So that's, like a big plus, because still a lot of people are kind of anxious about COVID and going and sitting inside a cramped room watching people try to make people laugh. It's not ideal, but it's...
Yeah. I wonder how long we can keep this up for, because people start getting cold at some point. I mean,
What's winter?
Yeah.
It hasn't. No.
So anyway, April 30th, Fiddler show, comedy show, bilingual. Yeah, so there might actually be a few more events before that April 30th show, but we'll let you know as soon as those are hammered out. So we'll keep you posted. Okay, people, and also don't forget that we have a Patreon page now with 2 tiers opening right now to, join, which is the tier Pinguino's Posse, is a tier which asks you for $5 a month. It will give you early access to select episodes and monthly travel tips to Chile, basically the best places to eat, rent, and so forth, and free and discounted tickets to events in Chile. So that's one thing. The other thing would be the $10 tier, which is my favorite tier because it's called Lenny Lovers with a little heart. Yeah, man, you gotta love Bethany's creativity here. Which basically gives you early access to episodes, membership merch, monthly travel tips, access to our discussion board on Discord. Maybe you get a discount there too, who knows? But you get free and discounted tickets to shows in and around Santiago, well, mostly in Santiago, and shout outs. So who doesn't love that? Come visit our Patreon page, join up, and give us some money because we need better equipment. Even though I got this new mic, so I hope, and I took away the little screen, so I hope people hear me better now. God damn it. All right, folks, so sit up tight, sit up straight, because we got a lot of news today for you. So let's start off with the COVID-19 update. As of today, which is Friday, March 25th, there are only quote-unquote, 8,247 cases, and the positivity rate is at 8.38%. Now, I cross-referenced that with my notes from last episode 2 weeks ago, and we had 10,650 cases and a positivity rate of 14.88%, so things have really gotten down. Actually, the number said there were 42% fewer cases than 2 weeks ago, so that's good news, everybody. Good news, everybody. The government is also working on a project to produce vaccines locally. Now, this could be in cooperation with the Universidad de Chile, which already operates a production center for vaccines and other biological products. Now, Carlos Safi, who's the Director of Innovation at the Universidad de Chile, announced that they will travel to Argentina between March 28 and 30, as well as to the World Vaccine Congress in Washington, D.C. from April 16th to 21st to hash out collaboration agreements on a regional scale. So we might have vaccines made in Chile at some point. That'd be great, so we're not so dependent on imports. Anyway, so unless you have something else to add there, so as of Monday, March 14th, in-person attendance is mandatory again for childcare, kindergarten, elementary school, and high school after the Piñera government left attendance as voluntary on March 10th and didn't even notify the successor government about this change, which caused quite a bit of a buzz there because Marco Avila was just like, hold on, what? Who made this change? Why didn't anybody tell me what's going on here? So they changed it back to make it mandatory. Now, and this is also true for all phases in the Paso a Paso plan, which is Apertura Inicial, Preparación, Transición, and Restricción, which used to be quarantine before, which is not quarantine anymore. Now, this has been criticized because not all schools have the means to implement preventive measures, which is mask, ventilation, distance, and so on and so forth. And moreover, in mid-March, a peak in COVID-19 cases in the age group from 0 to 19 years old could be observed, which can be associated with the back-to-school effect. So people were like, you want to send our kids back to school? Like, you crazy? This is like an incubator. And also, like, the thing is, like, if a student gets infected and online classes are no longer a thing, it's like they still have to stay home, but this time they just cannot catch up with the curriculum as easily as before. That's another thing, you know?
Basically just sick days.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, well, sick days is one thing, but they also have to remain quarantined. Well, but they're not really sick. They could, like, participate in class, like online at least, they're like not flat on their back, but, it's not a thing anymore. So, yeah, so basically responding to this criticism, the Ministry of Education has decided that at least 80% of the students of a class need to be completely vaccinated in order for the classroom capacity restrictions to be lifted, right? If it's less than 80%, then you can still have in-person attendance, but like it cannot be more than X amount of students per square meter, whatever, that kind of thing. And furthermore, the ministry gave schools some flexibility with respect to the length of the school day, meaning that the schools can define themselves until what time the school day will run. And this is meant to be a transitionary measure to ease schools and students back into like normalcy, if you will. No? Lastly, the ministry will provide subsidies for the procurement of anti-COVID measures such as masks, alcohol, gel, and soap, and all these kind of things, which is great because you got to consider not all schools have the same resources to, be safe. Let's talk about this little thing called MEPCO. Now, what's MEPCO, you ask? Yeah, you will. I'll tell you. I'll mansplain it to you in a few seconds. Now, the Finance Commission of Congress, as well as the lower house, unanimously voted in favor for doubling the funds for the MEPCO from $750 million to $1.5 billion as this threshold was soon to be reached.
Now, days later, the proposal was also approved unanimously in the Senate. Now, the MEPCO is the Mecanismo de Estabilización de Precio de los Combustibles, or in English, Fuel Price Stabilizing Mechanism, which was created in 2014 and basically seeks to stabilize the price development of fuels, preventing a too strong surge, preventing a too strong of a surge or drop in prices. So it can either be a price subsidy or it can also be a tax. So it works both ways. Now, with this cash injection, the MEPCO will be able to limit the fuel price surge to, and I thought that was kind of funny, to only, quote unquote, 6.7 pesos per week, which is just, I mean, if you think about the last couple of years, like if, like, I don't know, man, 3 years ago, if you had like a increase in price in fuel of 6.7 pesos per week, like you'd have riot in the streets. But they said, like, if it wouldn't be for the MEPCO, you would have a price surge of up to 250 pesos per week. Yeah, so like basically, if they wouldn't have topped off this little fund, that would have happened. So just be glad that we have that. Be glad that it's only 6.7 pesos and not 250 pesos per week. Holy shit, that's a lot, dude. The problem thing was, okay, like this whole measure was approved unanimously in the Senate as well as in the House of Deputies. But the problem was not so much with the expansion of the fund itself, but its use, because there were also calls to include paraffin, kerosene, and gas in the mechanism. So there were like calls to also include these kind of fuel, if you will. So in order to garner support from the lower house, Finance Minister Mario Marcel, he handed out a lot of political IOUs. He made a lot of commitments. He said to stop the rise in paraffin prices, he'd use resources from the Pandemic Emergency Fund, which is kind of like, really, man, this is still nice there, buddy, yeah. He assured that there will be no further rise in subway and bus fares, what you just talked about, and for that he'd analyze
what happens.
Yeah, right. And for that he'd analyze an increase in the subsidies of public transport, and he also say he would investigate. He was a little bit more cautious when it came to that point now, but he said he would also investigate possible measures in order to halt the surge in gas prices, while at the same time preventing funds to be misappropriated by gas companies implicated in these gas acts of corruption. So, like with gas, he's like, jury's still out on the gas price thingy, but he was just like, no worries about it. I'm gonna stop the rise in paraffin prices, and I'm like, public transportation costs, I'm not gonna surge. Just please do this for me. We need to top up the fund. So, and he said, like, I'm gonna have concrete things on paper by April. I was like, okay, buddy, April is like in a week. Like, I hope you really live up to your expectations. I mean, this guy is, I don't want to say he's a blank sheet of paper. I mean, he's a very well respected, I don't want to say politician, but person, Moving on, let's talk a little bit about the water shortage, because y'all might not realize, but we're right now going through a little water crisis here in Chile, and also like specifically in the metropolitan area. Well, it's not the worst here, but
No, but we're really screwed.
huh?
We're screwed.
Yeah, we're kind of screwed. I mean, don't think about, like, because metropolitan area Santiago is kind of Santiago. Like, what's gonna happen here? Like, yeah,
That is Chile, so.
yeah. So we're going through a tough time right now. So a group of about 150 municipalities, they are working on an ordinance right now to be able to deal with the water crisis in a more coordinated manner. So the idea is to restrict and sanction the misuse of water, which is already happening in several communities, like surprise, surprise, Lo Barnechea, which is one of the most affluent municipalities here in Santiago. For now, this will mostly affect the public use of water. So you as a private person do not need to be overly concerned about people turning off your water for now, but as I said, right now it will affect the public use of water, such as in parks, in gardens, soccer fields, public infrastructure in general, Now, just to give you a rough idea of what's happening right now around Chile, currently more than 50% of the country's municipalities are experiencing a water shortage, and those are 188 municipalities which house 8.3 million people, which is about 47.5% of Chile's overall population. Now, the governor of the metropolitan region, Claudio Rego, even warned that if the situation doesn't improve soon, he might have to implement water rationing. So then he's going to turn off your tap. I hope this is not going to happen. And to hammer this home, he even released a rap video inspired by the so-called tiradera by Puerto Rican rapper Residente, which was just painful to watch. But man, if he was out for attention, he got it. It was just, man, that guy ain't got no flow. So the fifth region of Valparaiso, has also been severely pummeled by this crisis. And now, lately, desalination plants are the talk of the town now to solve this crisis because they're already like important part of the infrastructure in countries like, for example, Israel. Now, don't get your hopes up too much because experts warn that those plants, of which there are actually already like 18 operational in Chile, they are not the cure-alls because first, between planning, the evaluation of the environmental impact, construction, and so on and so forth, those plans can take up to 4 to 5 years until they're operational, and they can cost up to 6 billion pesos, which is around $7.7 million, which is, I don't think it's that much. I mean, it's not. It's not. Yeah. I mean, it's not money that I have, but like, okay, we're talking about public infrastructure here, so that's something you can dish out, I guess. Well, there's another problem with those desalination plants is because since these plants filter out the sea salt through a process called reverse osmosis, which is a great band name, by the way, like they produce brine, which is being eventually dumped back into the sea, and that can severely impact the local maritime ecosystem. So now, and another point that someone brought up is that these treatment plants also need a lot of energy to operate, and which more often than not is being provided through the burning of fossil fuels. So that would also contribute to climate change. So, well, basically the summary here is that desalination plants, yes, great option, but it's not a cure-all. It's just an additional, basically one more tool in your toolbox to tackle this crisis. It just can't be the overall solution here. All right, guys, let me tell you a little bit about, or let me give you a little update about the state of emergency up there in the north. The king in the north. I didn't even know why I said that. Let me do this again. All right, guys, let me give you a little update on the state of emergency up there in the north. On March 16th, Congress approved the extension of the state of emergency in the 3 northern provinces, Arica, Parinacota, Tamarugal, and Eloa, with a whooping 142 votes in favor and only 3 against. And then later it was also voted on in the Senate and was also approved with a clear margin of 39 in favor and just 1 against. 1 against and 2 abstentions. Now, the Minister of the Interior, Isquia Siches, voiced hopes that they will find a sustainable solution to be able to de-escalate the situation in the north as soon as possible so that the government won't have to request another extension for 15 days from now, which would be April 1st. But that didn't happen because due to administrative reasons, the government decided to move up the vote for a second extension, which would then be until April 16th, which has been passed to the lower house again with a broad majority, which has been passed in the lower house with a broad majority and will have to be voted on in the Senate next week. So we'll probably have a state of emergency until mid-April. Colchane's mayor, on the other hand, Javier Garcia, he emphasized again that the state of emergency really hasn't done anything to prevent the markets from entering the country irregularly, nor has it provided the locals with the security that they needed. But the Subsecretary of the Interior, Manuel Monsalve, already announced that they are working on a plan to put out that dumpster fire up there in the north. And that plan includes a development program with investment initiatives, a program to recover public spaces that have been lost due to the migration crisis, implementation of migratory policies, whatever that means, and collaboration with the PDI to identify migrants that have entered the country irregularly, corroborating whether they do have a criminal record or not, so basically whether they have to kick them out again. Now, since I'm already talking about the whole state of emergency, let me just put in a quick correction here for something that I talked about the last episode. Like in the last episode, we were a little bit at a loss about why Camila Vallejo said that the state of emergency would not be extended, but then Isquia Siches confirmed that it would be. As you might have noticed, we're talking about 2 different states of emergencies here, right? There's one in the north and there's one in the south, and the one that got extended is the one in the north, and the one that did not get extended was the one in the south. So there's that. And since I'm already correcting myself here, just a completely different thing, I was actually referring, and I don't know if it's going to be in this episode or was in the last episode, I don't quite remember, but I was referring to the Venezuelan exodus as the second largest migrant crisis in modern history, right after the Syrian refugee crisis. Well, the Ukraine war has shaken this up a little bit and sadly taken the ground for itself, so let's just update that. It's still a pretty big crisis that we're facing, but the Ukraine sadly is, I think, now the biggest one. The Ministry of the Interior suspended a decree which established certain norms in the new migration law. That was a little bit tough for me to wrap my head around. But Okay, here's what I understood. So one of the norms that basically the retraction of this decree basically mm, uh, takes out of commission here is that the immigrants that have entered the country officially, quote unquote, legally. I try not to use the word legal in legal. I don't like that, but let's say they basically, if they enter the country regularly before March 18th, 2021, but they still have a irregular status, they have 180 days to apply for temporary residency without being sanctioned. Man. And another one is that people who enter the country regularly after March 18th, 2021, but have their visa expired due to the closing of the borders because of COVID-19, they will have to pay a fine online and request a new visa. Now, as I said, like the Ministry of the Interior suspended this decree, who basically gives power to these two norms. Now, my guess is, and please feel free to correct me if you know any better, but my guess is that this decree also affects the part in which migrants have to request a permit in their country of origin. And by suspending it, it would allow migrants to enter the country regularly. It thus take a bit of pressure off the situation, you know? Because right now, as you remember from the last episode, I think, like a lot of these migrants that are at the border right now, like even if they wanted to enter legally, they couldn't enter legally because they do not carry this permit that they would have needed to request with the Chilean consulate in their home country. They don't have this with them. So basically what they just do is they try to look for a way to enter it legally. So if that's what's happening right now, which I'm not 100% sure about, but that would kind of make sense because they could just come into the country legally and just a lot less of a shit show, in my opinion. Moving on, let's talk about a couple of things that I would like to call public service announcements. PSA news. A couple of small things you guys might find useful. First off, if you haven't heard yet, Netflix launched a pilot project in Chile, Costa Rica, and Peru, but I think they've expanded it to other countries now, which will slap the owner of an account with a surcharge if they share their account with people that do not live in the same place as they do. And I guess how they can tell this is probably by looking at the IP address. All right, so on Tuesday, March 17th, the nationwide vaccination campaign against the flu has begun. It will run until May 16th, and the vaccination is free if you belong to the target group of the campaign, which means this includes 1. People 65 years or older, 2. People with chronic illnesses between 11 and 65 years, 3. Pregnant people at any stage of pregnancy, 4. Children from the age of 6 until the Quinto Básico. I could never wrap my head. How old are you when you were in the Quinto Básico class?
Well, I got held back a year, so I have no idea.
God damn it, but you were like, what, ballpark? Like, what, 8?
No. Quinto Básico, 12?
Yeah, okay. I'll roll with that. So, yeah, if you're between 6 and 12-ish. Yeah. Yeah, if you're in Quinto Básico, like, you're not eligible anymore. So, 5, it also includes employees of employees of the preschool and the school system, also until Quinto Básico. So basically also until that class. So basically if you teach that class. 6, poultry and pig farm workers, which I thought was interesting because they probably wanna prevent another pork or avian flu from forming here in Chile, which is an interesting thing. And 7, of course, it also includes healthcare workers. The Ministry of Health says that you can also even get the COVID booster shot and the flu vaccine shot on the same day, but just try to use different arms. And that's not even metaphorically, it's just like just get one shot on one arm and the other shot on the other arm. But it's a thing you can do, you don't have to wait. So that's cool.
You can get it in both in the same arm and tell us what happens.
Exactly. If you turn green, who knows? All right. Another thing worth mentioning is that on Saturday, April 2nd, we are going back to wintertime. So basically turn your clocks back by 1 hour on Saturday night, just when the clock is about to strike midnight and you are about to turn into a pumpkin. All right, one more thing falling under the PSA category. On March 24th, the reformed consumer law came into effect, which extends the legal warranty on products by 3 more months to 6 months in total. You should know about this because if you purchased a product as of that day, like the product has to be made no earlier than March 24th. So in case that you purchased a product that is damaged, doesn't do what it's supposed to do, or was just not the product that you ordered, like then the consumer has a total of 6 months not 3 months anymore, but 6 months, to require the provider to either repair the product, change it, or refund the money paid. Right? Now, some products like electronics, they need to be checked first by an authorized technical service, whatever. But after that, the consumer can pick one of these three choices. So, people, know your rights. You can do this. All right. So, what's more on the news docket here? Now, Karen Rojo, mayor of Antofagasta between 2012 and 2020, made a run for it after the Supreme Court rejected her appeal on a technicality and upheld the original prison sentence from January 18th, 21 of 5 years prison, right, for embezzling 24 million Chilean pesos, which is about $30,800. Not that much, but then still good chunk of money. For like small municipality, I guess that is. Yeah. I don't know. I guess like when I hear about embezzlement in Chile, it's just like millions and millions and millions of dollars. You like, like Paco Gate and all these kind of things. So
Yeah, there's a lot of discrepancies.
it's like,
Usually we see how much money apparently, allegedly, Lavín stole from the last contesting.
oh yeah, you saw that meme that I sent you?
Oh, yeah.
Everything. Well, anyway, let's get to that later. So Karen Rojo, she used the funds that were originally meant to subsidize local schools and the municipal health, which it makes it even worse. It was just like, it was not funds to just, I don't know, build roads or whatever. It was like, no, it was to subsidize education and help sick kids. It was like, you couldn't have picked a worse fund to embezzle here. So she used that money to pay Jose Miguel Izquierdo, who is the owner of the consulting firm Main Communications, in order to ensure her 2016 re-election as a mayor of Antofagasta. Now, after it became known that the court upheld the decision, she got a last-minute ticket with KLM to Amsterdam on Thursday early in the morning for more than 1 million pesos and hightailed it. Which is funny enough. My wife just told me that's the same flight that my wife's aunt and uncle were on like the other day. So they were probably on the same flight as like Karen Rojo. So yeah, the Netherlands, they don't have an extradition treaty with Chile, but Interpol has already issued an arrest warrant for her. So, okay. I'm going to address the elephant in the room here. Like, how come she didn't have, I don't know how you say this in Spanish, like in English, the orden de arraigo. Like, how was she even how could she leave the country? She had a trial, like, there was a trial running with her as the main suspect. Like, how could she even leave? Why was she not blacklisted?
Because, well, I actually looked this up. So, and asked around. So apparently it's not implicit that you have an orden de arraigo if you're being investigated. A judge has to the what's this called? The other council has to push for it to be put into effect. The judge has to decide whether you have an orden de arraigo or not. Yeah. And apparently, it just never came up during this.
Yeah, they usually do this, especially when it comes to like, and also when it comes to, okay, now we're like, here's the sentencing, And also, I heard something on the radio today. Somebody was talking about like derecho de fuga. That apparently, like, I don't know if I should take this like literally, because like apparently, so basically, people have the right, condemned people. Or no, I want to not say condemned, but how do you say convicted people? Like convicts would have the right to flee, which is like, really, that sounds kind of weird. All right, moving on to two more lighthearted news items here. Now, some of you might have known that you can request a lot of certificates digitally with the Registro Civil here. One of them is your birth certificate, which is actually something that I love about the administration system here. Like, whereas in my home country, you just have to still just go to the bureau, the office, whatever you want to call it, and just like, okay, like, I want this certificate. So I come back in a week and pay in cash, and oh god, it's just such a drag. You can just like order shit online, you get it instantly if need to be. You pay with a credit card. It's just wow.
Do they have over there in Germany? Do they have like a guy like in the back room, just like writing everything?
Dude, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, I'm not even kidding. We still use fax machines. It really speaks volume about the state of digitalization in that country. But okay. So yeah, one of the things that you can order online here digitally is your birth certificate. Now, the Registro Civil has now added the option that if you want to get your birth certificate, you can also ask for your astral chart for mere 1,970 pesos extra, which is great. And this also caused, as you can imagine, a lot of hubbub on social media. I mean, not only memes, but also very harsh criticism, as this was actually seen as the state basically legitimizing pseudoscience.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see that. I can see that is kind of, yeah, you don't want to get involved with that. Like, you want to, do the right thing there. I mean, eh. Another thing that might lift your spirits is that 67-year-old Ezequiel Hinojoso, he was in for a big surprise when he found his late father's savings book and took it to the bank to see how much was on there. Turns out it was more than a billion pesos. Hold on, let me say this again. A billion Chilean pesos. You can see my pinky to the corner of my mouth now. Which is about $1.3 million, which is for one person substantial. So his father, to stay with the Austin Powers theme, he opened his savings account with the so-called Asociación y Préstamo Libertad in 1973 with a mere 138.44 pesos on it. I did not put this through an inflation calculator. That would have been interesting to see how much that's worth now, but I mean, it's definitely not a billion pesos.
I think most inflation calculations for the Chilean pesos goes only up to like 88.
Ah, okay. So yeah, but like 140,000 pesos now, it's okay. But back then, that was quite a bit. Now he would just put it on the saving account, and basically the compound interest just did its thing then, and it just was left there to its own devices. So he was just like, "How much is on there?" Oh, it was like about a billion pesos. He was like, "All right." So from what I understand, like, this was a state-run organization that no longer exists. Feel free to correct me. And it's up to the government now to pay out its owner. Now, Mr. Hinojoso did have a little tete-a-tete with Finance Minister Mario Marcel, who in turn will also have to consult with President Boric. But he also told Mr. Hinojosa that, look, if they will have to pay, they will pay, Now, the final decision is to be made on April 4th. And when asked about his plans, Mr. Hinojosa said that he will probably use the money to open up his own little driving school outside of Santiago.
Nice.
No big plans. He's like, yeah, no, I'm just going to open my little shop there and be a happy little puppy. So, well, he got my fingers crossed. I hope he gets the money. But I also get if the government be like, that wasn't part of the budget. Like, where are we going to get this money from now?
Well, they can take a page from Karen Rojo.
Yeah, I was just about to say the same thing. It's like, yeah, just take it out of the education and the health budget. How about that? Or maybe they could just call up Karen Rojo for help. Like, how did you do that? Just come back as an asesoría, like a consultant. Exactly, we're going to hire you again. All right, people. So that was the news for today. And now we're going to continue with part 2 about that big old dumpster fire up there in the north of Chile with the migration crisis.
Okay, everybody, welcome back. This is part 2 of us talking about the migration crisis in the north of Chile. Before we get started, we want to encourage you guys all to join our Patreon at either the $5 level or the $10 level. I know you're getting really tired of us hearing it, but it really helps us. It supports the podcast. If you like us, you want to hear more from us, you want to get episodes early, you want to get into events for free, you want to get merch, it's all there, my friend.
That's
right. You want a
right.
community of people you can chat with on Discourse? It's up there. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say about it. Lenny, take it away, bro.
Give us money. Make us rich. This Patreon dollar bills. I'm going to buy my own island with that.
The Patreon doesn't actually give you dollars. They just give you Patreon bills that you can only spend on Patreon.
Well, and then I'm going to buy a Patreon island and figure something out.
We're going to be patrons to the Patreon island.
See?
With the patrones.
This is how it works. Easy as that. All right.
Yes, easy peasy.
Okay, let me just jump into part 2 of the topic that we're discussing, which is the migration crisis up there in the north, close to the town of Colchane. Sir Edwin Colchane.
Sir Edwin Colchane of Brichtenshire.
So as in part 1, we talked about the timeline of events, the general causes of this whole thing, like what's going on in the subcontinent and why here and what the hell is going on. And so just in case you haven't really followed the news, by now you should know what is going on. And now we're taking a closer look as to why this happened and what are the problems that
are already
Led up
here,
to
and
it.
that might surface later on. So let me start with one point that you actually also, I think you also have a couple of things to say about this, Bethany, which is the promise of the democratic responsibility visa. So as we mentioned in part one of this episode, Piñera literally invited Venezuelans to come to Chile, and as a consequence, this government created the so-called democratic responsibility visa, which grants Venezuelans a temporary residency for up to a year. Although I looked into the requirements. I mean, they're still massive, to be honest. Like, you have to submit a lot of paperwork. Like, I wouldn't even know where to get half of those from. I don't quite remember what it was, but
we
it's
talked
not
about
like,
this.
Yeah, it's not easy peasy.
No, I mean, we talked about this last episode in part one about how, people will, bitch and moan about like, oh, but the immigration's so easy. I mean, even though there is this like easier track for people from Venezuela, it's still not easy. Immigrating is difficult, and it costs money, and it takes access to knowing somebody here to help you find a place. I mean, just trying to rent an apartment, rent a room, get a job, all of these things, there are factors in Chile that just make it incredibly difficult. So, I mean, so there's two aspects here we can talk about. One in which it is easier for Venezuelans than most other people, but it's still fucking hard, right? So and imagine also, if you're Haitian, right?
Right. And what I meant is also like this. It's not like it's enough to just raise your hand, say, "Hey, I'm Venezuelan. Here's my passport. Give me the visas." It's just like, no, we need this paperwork and this certificate, and like, you must not have committed a crime, and I don't have. No, it's just a lot of things that you need to prove in order to apply for the visa. And here's the kicker. So it pretty much looks like a fast track to residency, but so far only 14% of these visa applications have been granted. And on top of that, amidst the pandemic, the granting of the visas has also been paused, which I think is what happened in November 2020, when more than 91,000 open application processes have just been closed. Hey,
that's me. That's me right there.
Yeah, I think they were only talking about the democratic responsibility visa. I think so, but yeah.
Well, all I'm trying to say is I have been in trámite with my visa for over 2.5 years. Yeah. So I'm just saying, like.
No, but they from what I understood, like, these things have been closed, just like rejected. Thanks, sorry.
Rejected?
Bye. Yeah.
Rejected, or like they just closed the file to get to it later?
As far as I understand, okay, I might be wrong here. Just call me out if you know better, but I understood that it was closed and canceled, and that's it, So,
I don't think so, because as far as what I know from my visa process is, when you are rejected for your visa, you can reapply. So unless they like have like a special type of response to their specific visa, because there's not anything in the Chilean visa rules that are like that I know of. I mean, I could be wrong. You guys reach out to me. That's like, you're rejected, leave. It's like, you're rejected, refile this thing, right? Or reapply for this thing.
Right. No, I get what you mean, but here's the thing. Like, let's say they closed it, they rejected this whole thing, but you're already on your way here. And then all of a sudden you find yourself at the border and they won't let you in, because in order to apply for this visa, you need to actually ask for a permit at the Chilean consulate in your country and Venezuela first. And they're just what do I want to do?
Right. That was the new law, right? Because it's sort of like there's these things happening and overlapping.
Yeah, actually, what I've read is apparently, because yes, this is part of the new migration law, but apparently this rule has already been in effect for Venezuelans, particularly since 2019. From what I've read.
So they've always had to apply from outside.
Well, not always, but for a longer time than that. If you're Venezuelan listeners to that, like, please correct me if I'm wrong, but this is what I've read here. So that means like that of course does not only affect people that were like encouraged by Piñera's invitations to just, up and leave and find themselves a new home, and that leaves them now without recourse. It also means that a lot of spouses and children that seek to reunite with their families in Chile that arrived before the immigration policy got more strict, and in the wake of the pandemic, they are not now deprived of any legal means to enter the country, and trying to enter the country irregularly, because also like as of March 2020, due to the pandemic, a lot of border checkpoints just have been closed, so they like have no other means than just to hop the fence, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so there's a lot to unpack there. So there's one, like, you did everything you were supposed to do to get your legal residence in Chile. You arrive, and maybe you do have your legal residence initially and then it gets rejected and you have no way to reapply, because if you have to apply via outside, then how do you reapply when you're within the country? Right. Also, like, how do you get a job? How do you do what all of the Chileans are demanding you to do if there are no ways to do it?
I mean, not even within. You probably have to just, like, even if you're at the border of Bolivia, Chile, you basically have to hike back to Venezuela just to knock on the door of the Chilean consulate just to get the permit.
Consulate.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
And as we talked about in part 1, just the clusterfuck that was the pandemic in general, because the thing was, is the borders of Chile, like, the borders of Chile were closed. You could not leave. It did not matter if you were Chilean, Venezuelan.
Yeah.
It did not matter. You were not allowed to leave. So let's say you were here
there were exceptions
illegally.
Yeah.
There were exceptions, but that was usually the exceptions for people with resources who, I don't know, like, it was a weird situation. There were a lot of people that were like, oh, I have to leave because my mental health needs to go, which legitimate reason, your mental health, blah, blah, blah. But there are people, I'm trying to say is there are people that sort of took advantage of that.
Oh, I know a couple
to get to leave.
Those people. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then there were people who legitimately needed to leave who got rejected.
Yeah.
I wanted to return to my own country because I'm Venezuelan was not a reason they were going to let you leave.
That's a whole different can of worms, actually.
Yeah, especially if you were one of those people. I mean, we were talking about it last time. If you were one of those people who got stranded in Chile and were camping outside the consulate, how do you even know what's happening? How do you even know what your rights are to, I can apply, but where am I going to apply? I don't have a phone. I don't have internet access. I don't know that there's this rule. I'm not reading the news every day. I don't have access to that.
Right.
I didn't know that I could just be like, oh, my nana from my 4th cousin is sick and I must leave. You know, like... Yeah. I don't know. Not again. I understand people needed to leave for legitimate reasons and everything. I'm just saying, like, it kind of sucks that it's privilege, right? The privilege is very evident there.
Yeah.
So, we all got privilege. So I definitely have mine. So anyway.
Oh, I got mine all over the place.
I mean, come on, look at you.
Look at me, baby.
Look at you, white man over there.
All right.
White European man.
I'm like privileged discount warehouse over here. Come and get your privilege, yo.
And you're tall. God dang it.
God dang it. So that's the thing about the democratic responsibility visa. You'd like to add something to that? Oh, go and move on. Okay, cool. So another thing that I've noticed is that another thing that I've noticed is, and that was even before this whole new migration law came into effect, that Chile has been, especially like in the wake of this mass immigration event, has been treating immigration as a matter of order and security more than a matter of what it actually is, which is a humanitarian crisis. You know what I mean? Yes, please.
Is that because, okay, so I say this with all of the reality of that it's true, that Chile is like the little brother of the US. Like, it was formed in the US's image. I mean, and I say this as it is a historically accurate thing to say. Is that because they relate that in the way that the US sees security, like border security and things like that? Because
I think it has more to do with some, actually I was going to get to that in the next point, but let me just advance that. I think it has to do with the old immigration law from 1970.
The old immigration law?
Yeah, that was from 1970 something, so which already tells you that was actually made under that was signed into law under the Pinochet regime. So basically
under the Dick.
Yeah, the Dick regime.
The Dick.
They signed it with the Dicks. Right.
They signed it up, probably.
Yeah.
Would not be surprised.
Yeah.
Dip your dicks in ink.
Oh, geez, I don't even. Oh boy. Yeah.
I'm sure it wouldn't sting that bad.
Yeah, I don't know, but like it's very
keep going.
I guess, yeah. Like now, I can't get this picture out of my head. So yeah, I think that is one of the main reasons here, because that law was a bit more focused on national security, like getting Allende followers out and getting, like undesirables out, desirables in, pretty much, or basically keep everybody out who's not desirable. So that was more of a state security issue.
But if it was, okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, but also, again, this was the time in which, are there any historians out there that can fill us in on this? I'd be super interested. That was also the time in which we are seeing like the Chicago boys and all these things happening with the US literally experimenting in Chile with how things should work, how the US wanted things to work in the US. And so they sent things here to see how they would work here. So it's also possible that the US was like pushing for certain types of immigration policies that they could then implement in the future. I mean, I don't know which came first, the chicken or the egg, but it is something to point out, because that's one reason the Constitution and a lot of the laws exist here that they do, is because they were literally written by people who studied in the US for the US.
I think that's absolutely possible. I have no way of, confirming this, but sounds legit to me.
Piggybacking onto that sort of like whole security thing, like a lot of the racism in the US that comes is like, oh, everybody's bringing their delinquency and their drugs into the US for people, and that exact same discourse is here. Like, oh, the Colombians are here bringing their cocaine, or Venezuelans are here becoming drug dealers, and like there's more violence.
But that's the discourse in every country who has experienced massive immigration.
Because I
think so, because it was the same in Germany when we had like the Syrian refugee crisis in 2015.
Because I just know
them Arabs.
I only know the US and Chile, and like I said, sometimes there's so much overlap there that I don't know if that's just US Chile shit going down, or if that's people just being xenophobic assholes.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, I think it's just like the psychological reaction of people having to deal with a lot of change very quickly. So yeah, I digress. So basically, as soon as it became evident that the situation on the northern border could like evolve into something more problematic than it was in the very beginning, so the government has so far been mostly conspicuous by its absence. Like nothing really has happened. But then when it did take action, it was not about processing and redirecting the flow to the best of its abilities, like integrating the immigrants and everything, but rather trying to build a dam, so to speak, to stop the flow by deploying stricter border control measures and deterrence methods such as mass deportations, which I think like took place already in August 2020,
Build the walls.
So like this has actually been one of the major criticisms of the government's performance, because they did not heed the recommendations by specialized international organizations as how to handle the situation. And they treated the issue as a matter of order and security, as already said, instead of seeing it for what it is, a humanitarian crisis. The government.
That's literally, that's like so Chile. I can't even like the entire like thing that the new government wants to do is like reform what the carabineros are, because the whole point of the carabineros is security. It's not like to protect and serve, as we would say in like the US. It's from keep everything secure, keep the building secure, keep this, in which that mindset does affect how you treat your citizens, right?
I mean, it makes perfect sense, because it's also like a vestige of the Pinochet dictatorship,
I mean,
in that mindset, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So the zeitgeist,
I mean, it's in, again, my brain is just going to like what happened. Again, I apologize. I understand this is very like ethnocentric of me to be like the US, but again, I'm from there. I live here, so it's going to come up. It's just like the whole like, it's like the whole like build a wall thing that Trump said. And then Gast, who lost the election, like he was going to do a reverse wall. He wanted to build like a ditch to keep people from coming in. And it's like, I thought we decided this didn't work. I thought we decided that this was a dumb thing to do.
Actually,
why?
Yeah, actually, good thing you just mentioned that, because the government also operated mostly under the assumption that more obstacles will deter new arrivals. And as you just said, like this assumption has been proven wrong time and time again. And instead, it has been widely recognized that the migration flows are almost as uncontrollable as a natural disaster. No, I don't want to call it natural disaster. It's a natural phenomena. Let's see, like migration flows. It's something that happens. You cannot really control. You can
migration
steer
has
it.
never not happened.
Right.
Since we have had human. We used to be literally. We used to be like, what were they called? Little
migrants. Hunter-gatherers.
No. Yeah. Well, we used to be. What are they called? What's the word in English?
Nomads.
Nomads. There you go. Like wigwams. Nope. That's what they built.
Wombats. I don't know. Something.
We used to all be wombats, and it was so much better.
So cute.
No, I mean, and I mean, like that's what we like. It's in our DNA. Like I don't know, to like go to the safer place, to figure out what to do to our families. Like it's since humankind has existed, like there are not a lot of things on a sociological level that it's existed in every culture, but
right. I mean,
migrating and getting to a safer place has almost existed in every culture.
Right. I mean, you can definitely steer and try to redirect a little bit the flow of migrants. I mean, the same way that you would like steer and redirect the river, but it's really hard, if not impossible, to dam this up because, you know, where there's a will, there's a way. And also, I mean, you have to consider that a lot of these people, like especially the ones that come from the worst possible circumstances, let's say Haiti or Syria, they go like, well, fuck it, I'm out of here, you know? It's like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna try it anyway because it can't really get much worse than this.
Exactly.
So like
exactly.
I have really no place to go. So I'm just going to keep on trying, you know, and that's something that people apparently, like a lot of government, don't really understand. So like
you think we would? It's been long enough, you guys. It's been the history of humankind. Let's figure out a better way to do this. Like, there's got to be a better way than treating people like shit. You know,
right?
Like the bar's real low on how to improve on this. Yeah. Let's not put people in cages and burn the children's things.
Oh, good Lord, yeah. And so what the Chilean government has done so far is, as I said, like they've like doubled down on the border control. But what
let's specify that this is up to now Piñera's government. We're just now starting Boric's government. So let's specify this.
I think Boric already sent the tanks up to the. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, hey, we have other things about Boric to talk about. Updates since 2 days ago when we first started this conversation. Let's wait. We can, I guess, bring it up now, or do you think there's a easier place to bring it up? Okay, I'm just bringing it up now, right now, you guys. Okay, so Lenny and I are both quite confused about what's happening right now with the state of exception in the north, because it has been renewed under Boric's government, but Boric's government said that it wouldn't be renewed, so we're not quite sure. And they said they wouldn't renew it again. So we're not quite sure what's happening. Maybe we're just dumb and can't understand what's going on. We can speculate, but what I think is probably that vote was already sort of in its way, like on its way from Piñera's desk to get voted on by the time Boric got into office. And so they couldn't really stop it.
Yeah, I still have no idea what's going on. I mean, I guess by the time that this comes out,
what we're trying to say is we have no idea what's going on, but the state of emergency has been extended, but the Boric administration says they're not going to extend it again once it expires, because they're only a certain amount of days.
Right. Either we're completely dumb here, or it's really confusing and all the right-wing conservatives are going to be like, see, I told you this was going to happen. You know?
Right. So we have no idea what's going on. We're glad you tuned in for all of our insights.
Right. So
we do know that there is a state of emergency that is starting again. That's what we know.
So certainly back to what I said before there. So it's like the Chilean government basically since early 2020 put all the chips on stricter border controls. And what happens there, if anything, like these stricter border controls cause a so-called balloon effect, is what it's called. So basically this forces migrants to take an even more dangerous routes to find alternative points of ingress.
Yeah, because they're still going to try. Like they're not going to be like...
Case in point, they doubled down on Colchane, and then basically this redirected the migration flow to this little border town called Oyawe, which is 300 kilometers further down south, you know?
Oh, yeah. As they would say in Mexico.
Yeah, that was happened. And also there's another nasty side effect to this whole like doubling down on border controls, because it absolutely enables human trafficking, because there's going to be a demand for human trafficking. You have these so-called coyotes who are charging you $200-$300, which doesn't maybe not sound a lot to us, but to, you know, some poor sod who's coming all the way from Venezuela, Haiti, Colombia, who spent most of their savings already. That's a lot of money. And it's especially not guaranteed that they get in. You know, it's not that there's a refund. Because then
there's scam. Like you have to
customer service. I do get across the border.
No, that is a very dark joke. But though, since there's no customer service in this country, it's like, welcome to Chile.
Yeah.
No customer service here either.
Yeah, can't get any better. So now, so as I said, like basically there was like this balloon effect that basically sent migrants from one point to another. But even after the deployment of the armed forces to the border of Colchane in September last year, there were like testimonials of the military being absolutely overwhelmed and unable to control the influx of migrants. So even while they sent the military to the border, they couldn't even just handle all the inflow there. So I got to say one thing. Apparently there was the measures seem to have worked to a certain degree. If the regional governor of
which
Antofagasta, if the regional governor of Antofagasta is to be believed, because apparently he observed fewer crossings in Oyawe after the implementation of the state of emergency in February. But I'm not sure how much I buy into it, because that seems mostly apocryphal to me. I mean, there have been conflicting accounts there. That is to be expected. But I think if you just look at the big numbers, it just didn't really work out the way that they planned it.
Okay, so there's like some discrepancies between what he's been saying and what's happening.
Yeah, exactly. And I think he also sort of had an agenda. I'm not quite sure, but also like he's.
Everybody got an agenda.
It's like, okay, well, you've been there for one day.
But also like, if your motivation for wanting to keep the carabineros in the north is saying this is working,
of course,
because then you would say it, even if it's not working, because you prefer the hard hand over the soft touch. What? Caress. So okay.
And one more thing, I mean, let's not forget that actually one of the main reasons all of these illegal border crossing is the fact that a lot of border checkpoints are just simply closed for business. The checkpoint at Colchane has been opening and shutting down a bunch of times for the last few months. And even Colchane's mayor pleaded with the authorities to just reopen the border complex once and for all, so that the immigrants would at least be able to enter the country legally and therefore be registered in the system. It was just open, shut. Like nobody knew what was going on. Everybody was like, everybody's doing what they want.
And we don't know why it's been fluctuating like that.
Yeah. I think I don't know for sure, but what I read into this was that apparently the checkpoint was just absolutely overwhelmed with demand. So at some point,
so they were like, "Not my job."
And we just can't handle this anymore, and they just like shut the border, assuming.
I mean, that is something that happens.
Just like turn around, be like, "Okay, fine, fuck it, we go back home."
But that's also it's something that happens here in Chile a lot in a protest. Like, we're overwhelmed. I'm not fucking doing this anymore. Like, what was it during COVID, when we had the peak about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago?
Yeah.
There was so many things for like nurses to do that nurses were just like, fuck it, and like walking out.
Yeah.
And because they were so overwhelmed, and it was like provoking violence. Like, people couldn't get into the hospitals, and so they're being violent against like nurses and people working in the hospitals. Nurses were like, "Fuck this, I'm out." So I mean, if the same thing is happening,
the nurses were just like, "Hell yeah, I've been looking for a way to vent my stress. Bring it, bitch."
I mean, pay nurses more. Every single country. I don't care how much you're paying them, pay them more.
Yeah, it's a thing that's like
pay the doctors less, pay the nurses more.
Apparently not in Sweden and Norway, because apparently they do everything right. I don't know what's going on there, but like apparently Norway
they could probably still pay their nurses more.
Yeah,
give them a little more. Give them a nice little bonus.
Yeah, well, they could pay podcasters more too, I think.
Us. Our job's super hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, I put a lot of research
unpaid labor is hard. So that's true. If you love us, join our Patreon, because we can have more time to spend on research.
Yeah,
right?
And more money to spend
unpaid
on
time is
bikes.
Harder than paid time for research. But we love you guys either way. Either way, if you listen, if you don't have the means, we understand not everybody has the means to like give $5 a month for like a Patreon.
We love you anyway, but you know who you are.
Podcasting is a free accessible medium for a reason, and free accessible mediums are important.
Yep.
There's my soapbox.
Okay,
Getting
cool.
back down. I'm going to wash my hands with that soap. Let's do this. Everybody wash your hands, COVID.
Okay, now let me talk a little bit about the problems with the application of that new migration law that passed recently. So, as I mentioned before, the new migration law replaces the old law 1094, which is a holdover from the Pinochet regime, which mainly aimed to preventing the entry of undesirable elements, quote unquote, into the country and expanding Allende's followers, And as I said, also, it was more focused. I love that term. It's just so smooth. So it was more focused on the issue of national security than humanitarian.
How did you get in if they wanted undesirable elements? How'd you get in?
I'm totally desirable. I'm white, male, tall, and European. There you go. It's terrible.
Yeah.
It is as it is.
It's terrible to say, but it is what it is.
Right. So one of the tenets of this new law is actually that it actually decriminalizes illegal immigration. I was kind of surprised to read that. It sounds good, but here's the thing. And now little CMA, I'm not a lawyer, so I might miss out on some of the finer points here, but
he sells soda.
Yeah, I'm a soda lawyer, small town pizza lawyer. So here's what I understood. So under the old law, as well as the new one, actually, in theory, you could enter the country illegally and then make your way to the next border control point and turn yourself in. And in theory, they should then be you should then be taken to the next sanitary residence during the COVID pandemic, of course, where they have you quarantine for a while. And in the meantime, they sort out your status as a refugee. Sure. And after that, in theory, you'd be free to travel inside the borders of Chile and lead a happy life and whatever. Now, what I've heard is that since the new law kind of decriminalized illegal immigration, apparently it takes away the need for due process in a certain sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it is suspected that if they turn themselves in and admit to illegal entry, the courts might actually use this as the reason to justify expulsion.
Yeah, that makes sense, because if it's criminal, you have the right to due process under criminal law. But which is why in the US there are, not the only reason, but that's why a lot of people stay in jail at the border for so long, is because they have the right to due process. Well, so for example, a really famous example right now is the girl from Inventing Anna, I think it's called. Inventing Anna. It's like a new series on Netflix.
Sorkin, what's her face? She just got extradited to Germany, no?
Well, she's about to get deported. So like, she's a really famous series anyway. Like right now, she was in prison. She got released from prison, and then she got put back in jail on the border to wait for her trial to get deported. Because they can't just deport her and send her back to Germany. She has the right, hooray, to stay in jail for another year, 2 years until she can get a judge to say if she's been there legally or not.
Yeah.
So,
and that's the thing. Like neither here nor there. Like it's here. You can't just expel people willy-nilly. There's a process to it. I mean, first, at least here in Chile, you receive a written notice. Then if you don't comply then there's a monetary fine, and as a last resort there's the expulsion. Like what the government has been doing so now, it's just like
unless they don't let you through the border. This is once you get through the border, though, because for example they can expel you in the airport, for example.
Okay, gotcha. Is it then still part of expulsion, or
I don't know the terminology, but for example, like you don't have the right to that kind of due process until you're on Chilean soil, which is through the border, right? And so this, for airports, it's a little bit more complex because you literally have that like PDI line. So what they have been doing specifically for Haitians, because I think that they like took away the Haitian visa at some point in like 2019. There were a lot of Haitians already on their way. They'd get stopped at the airport and then like kept at the airport for X amount of hours to see if they really were there legally or illegally or trying to come in on a tourist visa. I think they took their tourist visas away, and then they would just pop them right back on a plane and send them back. Same thing here when a lot of people tried to come into Chile without the correct vaccinations or without XYZ, that their insurance, people have been turned away from Chile. I was almost turned away from Chile and a resident here.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
So like, what?
I can imagine that was fun. I mean,
it was not at all fun.
I got my place. I got my work here. I need to get
my home is here. My boyfriend's here. My apartment's here. I live here. My family's here. Please let me in.
Yeah.
It was just a mix up, but it's like that. That's a different situation. That's sort of like at the discretion of the PDI, whether they let you in or not. And then after that, you sort of. And also, begin that process. Again, we're not lawyers. This is just from like what we've learned on the interwebs,
right? And this whole thing about like skipping this due process, apparently they also did this before the whole new migration law came into effect. It's not like they were, people, they were reading their, so to speak, Miranda rights before they kicked them out of the country. They were just like going for it, And from what I've read so far, like especially in Cochin, it was sort of like a no gods, no masters, free for all situation at the border. So like it's so far that everybody has pretty much been doing whatever they fucking like. Like local authorities even mentioned that people were like coming and going as they pleased, quote unquote, And added to that, and as I as I mentioned, that I think we mentioned it in the last episode, like the new migration law states that Chile will give a legal status only to those who got a permit from the Chilean consulate of the country of origin before March 18, 2020. So that means that people that were already on the way when the new migration law was passed are now in for a surprise once they arrive. So that's another problem with the new migration law, you know. Right. And as I also said before, from what I understand, like the requirement to obtain this special permit from the Chilean consulate has been actually a reality for Venezuelans since 2019 already, which actually back then caused a massive pileup at the Arica-Tacna border back then, because they were trying to get into there and they were just like, where's a permit? And they were like, what permit are you talking about? I don't know nothing about no permit. So
these things change so quickly. I mean, there are still people that I see on the internet, on Facebook and stuff, like being like, so I'm here on a tourist visa, how do I get my blah? And it's like, you can't anymore. It's been like this, you know,
your country
you have to go back
anymore.
Yeah. It's very like the terminal. No, it's like, you can't come here, get a job and then apply for a visa anymore. Like I did that. I was able to do that. I legally could do that. Right. You could do that, but you can't anymore. And so a lot of people are under this like misconception that they can come here and do that still, which is really bad, because like, imagine you pick up your entire life, you come to Chile, you're expecting to be able to get a contract from somebody and then apply. And then you're like, but my whole life's here now. What do I do? And it's like, oh, well, you got to go back to your country of origin and apply and wait. And I know you quit your job, but you know, so.
I wonder if this also applies to tourist visas. I mean, I can't imagine that though. I mean, they might actually exclude a few countries maybe.
You cannot on a tourist visa, you cannot apply for a temporaria anymore.
Right. So basically you can come into the country on a tourist visa, but if you want to apply for sujeto contrato temporario, you probably have to go back to your own country, just do the whole.
You have to apply from without your country, right? So, without Chile, within your own country.
Yeah.
So you can come here on a tourist visa. You can extend your tourist visa, you know, I think once. I don't think all countries can do that.
They used to do this neat trick. You just hop into a bus, cross the border to Argentina,
and you can do that still.
I've been so many times to Mendoza. I got sick of this town. Yeah, but now with COVID, it's you know.
But I mean, technically with tourist visas, you can still like do the whole border hopping thing, which I feel like almost every single immigrant has done at one point or another in Chile. Yeah, if you have not gone to Mendoza, hop the border and come right back to refresh your visa.
Mendoza's a pretty town.
I would be shocked. Also, Mendoza's awesome. It's rad. So anyways, you can still do that, but it's harder to do now because of having to pay PCR. If you have to pay, you know, $150 for PCR in Mendoza to come back, it's like, holy fuck, what the fuck?
Yeah.
So, and then to get another PCR, maybe.
I don't even know what the requirements are. The Argentinian border, like, are they going to let you in just like that? I have no idea what it is. So, like, I'd rather not hop onto a bus right now to go to Argentina just to be, you know, confronted with the surprise at the border crossing.
And, you know, at any point, it doesn't seem like the something the Boric government would do, but at any point they could do what they do in Europe, which is like, once you've outstayed your tourist visa, you can't have another tourist visa for another, 6 months?
Yeah.
It's something like that in Europe. So like, you can't just hop borders like that. So that could happen at any time. Right. So
anyway. So this requirement, if you want to get a professional working visa, that you need to apply for permit at the consulate of your country of origin before, that is basically a move to deter immigration. Can't tell me nothing else, because it assumes then people actually can run this errand also without having to fear repercussion from, let's say, an authoritarian regime. So I don't really know what the situation in Venezuela is. So please correct me if I'm wrong, but I could imagine that a lot of people be like, okay, I would go to the Chilean consulate, but I don't know what would happen to me if somebody catches me doing it. I don't know how it works over there, but
I don't think it's that kind of intense, because
I don't know, but it certainly is a luxury that not everybody can afford.
Sure. Also, if you live close enough to the consulate, imagine,
exactly.
The closest Chilean consulate in Arkansas is 8 hours away from where I'm from.
Right.
So imagine I live in Santiago. I can worst comes to worst, I could walk 4 hours or 2.5 hours or whatever to the embassy, right? But if I lived in Colchane,
the U.S. embassy from your house, you need half an hour. Come on. Yeah.
From my house to the embassy, I'd have to pass through. I'd have to go all the way through. No, it's not half an hour walking. There's no way, because I'm Manquehue. I'd have to go Manquehue, Escuela Militar, Alcántara, El Golf, Tobalaba. 5 metro stations.
All right. Okay. Fine.
Maybe an hour and a half if I'm a fast walker, but I'm not. So there you go. Probably 8 hours.
All right. Anyway, you raised a good point. So if you live in some like really, backwater village in the middle of the jungle, and you go like, hey, I want to go to Chile, you have to make your way to the capital where the next consulate is, and then just apply there, and then go back. It's not feasible. And on top of that, like this measure does not consider, or maybe that's the point, because it doesn't consider the limited capacities that these consulates have, especially when faced with a wave of applications, as it was the case in Venezuela. So there is a huge backlog right now, and many requests are just simply denied because they can't even, So
yeah, they just can't even.
That's another thing.
Right. I mean, we're talking the United States is having a huge collapse. One of like the most powerful countries in the world is having a huge collapse. They can't even get passports to their citizens. Like, so if you're talking about Venezuela, with, the situation that's going on there, which of course I'm not going to speak to it necessarily because I've never been there. I don't know what everything goes like in there, but I can imagine if the one consulate is being
how many
bombarded.
People work there? Like 5?
Right, exactly. And again, as we talked about, if they're anything like Chileans, they'd be like, fuck this, and just walk out. Did too much shit. I'm not going to get paid enough for this shit. It's not my job.
Bob, your quota for today is to process at least 1,500,000 visa requests.
Where'd Bob go? He's on his third. He's on his third cigarette break. He needs more cigarettes now.
Yeah, it's like twitching already. Right.
Oh God.
All right. Another thing that is problematic right now with this whole situation is that according to the Declaration of Cartagena from 1984, Venezuelans are actually to be considered and granted refugee status. But many of the continent's countries, including Chile, don't really comply. I mean, you just have to look at the expulsion of migrants from Iquique on September 24th last year to see that this is true. Like, they were not considered refugees that they should have been according to the Declaration of Cartagena. So the Jesuit Migrant Service, they have their concerns about like how this new law, and they point out that there are actually no mechanisms in place to ensure that those detainees are being properly vetted, get the chance to talk to family members that already live in Chile, or being assigned a translator in order to make sure that they fulfill all the requirements to be granted the refugee status, And they also point out that most of the personnel at the border is not even trained to carry out this due process. So let me just, let me just quote this one thing that I read, which I thought was a nice quote. It says, "The legal treatment of human mobility is based on the state of emergency. The government has insisted time and time again on adopting exceptional measures when managing migration. It did so, for example, with the so-called humanitarian plan for orderly return of foreigners," which sounds so cynic, which sought to limit the rights of migrants. So there you have it. That's a problem in and of itself. Like, these people should be granted refugee status. They're not. They're just being sent right back.
And this is connected to something I mentioned in part 1 when I mentioned, you remember when I mentioned that there is no such thing as immigration lawyers in Chile? This is very like representative of how everything works with immigration in Chile. Chile is incredibly unprepared for how to deal with immigrants, how to process immigrants, how to humanely communicate with immigrants. There's no classes. For example, my boyfriend went to like the number 1 school, they always say it's either La or Católica. He went to low and there are no classes on immigration, on like the rights of immigrations. You can't just be like, what are my rights? People don't know. People at the PDI don't know your rights. And they don't care. Like, and that's the PDI certainly hasn't been trained in it if the lawyers of the country haven't been trained in it. And then we're talking about like just the influx of all of these people that want to come to Chile. The extranjería is completely underprepared, and the people working at the extranjería don't know what the fuck they're doing. I mean, I remember personally, I had one of my visas expired, and I had already applied for my new visa. But as you know, before you can do anything, you have to have your proof of trámite, which is the proof that your visa is in processing.
Right.
But I had to leave the country because my mom died. And so I had not yet received that proof of trámite. And sometimes it can take 6 months for you to get that motherfucker.
If you're
and
lucky.
So I called the PDI, I called the Extranjería, I called the airport, I did every single thing that I knew that I could do to try to figure out, like, how can I leave the country? Because something that happens in Chile is you are not allowed to leave Chile if you are not on regular status, if you are somehow illegally here. Like, you're not allowed to leave. They just keep you here, which is like great. Like, it's like, can you let me leave?
Weird. Like, okay, hold on, you're illegal, and they're like, don't you want?
And they won't let
you
leave. No, and they don't let you leave. So I'm like panicking, trying to figure out what to do. I even went to the Extranjería and waited in line for 6 hours to ask somebody what to do, and they didn't know. They didn't know what to tell me. I was like, I have to leave. Like, my mom, I have to leave. My mom died. I have to go. I'm not going to miss her funeral because you haven't given me my thing. Is there some special permission, something I apply for? Nobody told me. Literally, me and my boyfriend's a lawyer, sat down and read the laws of Chile. And when I was supposed to leave the country, I took the laws with me to the PDI, and they were like, no, you can't leave. And I was like, here's the laws. And I had to talk to like 4 people, and they finally let me leave. But it was just like,
so
they don't know.
Laid down the law there.
Literally. But there's no foundation for all the other things that need to happen. You have to have the foundation of the training, of the knowledge of like what has to happen before you can even deal with regular immigrations, and then even irregular situations that happen, like me. And this, like, I fell into this hole between my visa expiring and not getting my confirmation of process yet. So it's like, what do you do with these people, right? And that I don't know. That's like one of the most frustrating things. Is there's and it's not their job. It's like, that's not my job. I don't care. Like,
typical, no,
it's nobody's job.
I'm gonna go out on a limb here. I think okay, you got to consider that the Chileans' economic upswing, so to speak, has been a fairly recent phenomenon, if you will, if you talk 100%. In terms of decades. So I wouldn't be surprised if basically this whole, the attitude, but also like the whole legislative body around migration laws, it's kind of like humdrum, like, like, why would anybody want to come here? Like, look, it was like 1973, people wanted to leave and go. Like, why would anybody want to look for refuge in Chile? And then all of a sudden, Chile took off economically, and then they were like confronted with a whole new reality that they weren't used to, because people coming here to look for a better life, which
they still ask us that question, because again, we're quote unquote good immigrants. They're still like, why would you come to Chile? And I'm like, I like it here. They still like, but I think you're 100% right. I think Chileans who live here, who grew up here, Chileans are very like, they shit on Chile a lot. They're not like Argentinians who are like, Argentina rocks.
If I get Chileans a nickel every time somebody asks me, it's like, why would you ever come to live in Chile? I'd be not very rich, but I'd have a few dollars. I could buy a beer from that, let's say.
And I could definitely buy a couple beers. It's just so many. Why would you come to Chile, or why would you live here? And then people get even more surprised that I came and stayed before I met my boyfriend. I'm like, and no, I met him after. I came here.
You came here for health insurance, right? Did he say that?
Yeah. I came here to marry a lawyer, to take advantage of the system.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of speaks for itself that it's even worse in the States, dude.
But it's, no. Again. But also it's just ironic, because there's all this hate on so many immigrants, and every Chilean you talk to wants to go study abroad or wants to live abroad because they hate Chile. I don't know what it is. Chileans hate Chile, and every single person wants to either leave and live abroad or at least study abroad. But God forbid somebody wants to come to Chile to do the same thing, and they will. No, it's just gross.
I mean, controversial opinion here, but I think especially in recent years, like, Chile has become one of the most modern countries I've known. I mean, they have this now with the new constitution, with the parity in the Congress,
100%.
They got these no plastic laws. They had like the
100%.
the how do you say, the warning signs of the food packaging,
which apparently works.
Actually, I saw like an article in Germany just being like, why don't we do it like this, like these guys in Chile over there,
like Chile.
You know, there's a lot of very modern things going on here, and feel this is getting better by the
even
day.
What is it? Even a broken clock is right twice a day. As we say in Arkansas.
Well,
no, I love Chile. I know, and really, it does some. Honestly, in recent years, has been done some super great things, but at the same time, there's still a very Latin American, slow to change in certain aspects, right? Because I think it's almost like a growth spurt, right? When you're like a kid and you grow so fast, your clothes suddenly don't fit. I just bought these clothes 2 months ago, right? I just bought these clothes 2 months ago and they don't fit. And it's like, oh, it's great, you're growing, but now you need new clothes. You know, it's like,
I need a new constitution.
Yeah. And it's great. You know, the growth is not bad, but you've grown out of certain behaviors. But it's like Chile still wants to wear those jeans that are too short because they're his favorite and they have the Ninja Turtles on them or something. So
those rock though.
I mean, who doesn't love the Ninja Turtles, right?
Everybody loves the Ninja Turtles. Yeah.
Michelangelo.
Leonardo was the best. Come on. Don't even get me started.
You're biased.
Yeah, of course I am. And he had a kick-ass katana. Come on. All right.
There you go.
Let me just talk about one last point, which was also a little bit controversial, because look, illegal immigrants right now are supposed to be repatriated to the country through which they enter Chile, which in most cases is Bolivia, you know. However, like the Chilean government didn't really square this with the Bolivian government. So the Bolivian border police, more often than not, is not even willing to take back.
Well, the Chilean government was not having diplomatic relations with the Chilean.
On top of that, which actually Boris wants to change.
Yeah, Boris has just announced he's changing, making sure we have more diplomatic relations with Bolivia, which for me is great.
Bolivia is playing hardball, though. They were just like the demand. The thing is not off the table about access to the sea.
I mean, that's been the thing forever for Bolivia, right?
Right.
Is the access to the sea, literally since the Pacific War. So
I digress. So that's the thing. They go like, you go back to where you came from, which is Bolivia, as far as I'm concerned. And Bolivia, it's just like, nope. So basically, these refugees just also like get stuck in no man's land. It's like they can't go there, they can't go there. And honestly, not that I would condone this, but like if Bolivia was smart, they'd use this for political horse trading. I mean, this is what happened in 2015, 16, 17, when we had like this quote unquote flood of Syrian migrants coming towards Germany. We basically did some horse trading with Turkey, saying, "Hey guys, you received some money from the European Union."
I don't know if I like it.
I don't like it. No, but it is absolutely horse trading, because they were just like, Europe was just like, you're gonna get some money from us if you keep these migrants at bay. So basically, Turkey kept them all within the borders, not gonna leave them anywhere. And at some point, Turkey was just like, what if I just turn up the pressure a little bit? They were like, hey, give me more money or I'm going to send all them your way. You know?
Yeah. And if Bolivia is smart, they'll keep the Venezuelans, because again, most of them had free education, highly educated, highly skilled, and can really help the Bolivian economy, which does need help.
What I'm saying is that this could go both ways. They could do that, or they could be like Chile, you know what? It's like, we're going to facilitate them at your borders and we're not going to take them back. I mean, there's a lot of potential like political tension in the making here. So like they got to watch out for that too, you know?
Yeah.
And in general, there has been an absolute lack of multilateral coordination. Like, as far as I can tell, there have been no talks.
Dick swinging, I feel like, between Bolivia and Chile for so long.
Right, that too. But I'm not only talking about Bolivia. There have been no talks like with any of the neighboring countries, Peru, Bolivia, Argentina, and how to handle this whole situation
that's
together.
The thing is, that's what I mean. There's been so much. I think there's been a lot of bitterness aimed at Chile.
Yeah.
For a long time, for a lot of reasons.
There's
for a lot of reasons,
country that Chile hasn't been in a fight with.
Exactly. Chile has fucked every single neighbor over, and now they're the most successful person, and I would be fucking pissed too. You know, like, and they don't want to help out. They actively see the people from other countries actively see Chileans being like, we don't want you pigeon eating people here in our amazing country. You're bringing drugs, you're bringing violence, you delinquents. And it's bad. Like, there's not good diplomatic relations, so Boric has like an uphill battle to fight.
especially if you consider that actually Chile once led the regional efforts to promote the quote global compact for migration, like they eventually withdrew from that. Now Boric is very much in favor of this whole multilateral approach, and he proposed a quota system to distribute the refugees, very much like people did it in the European Union, which I think I think it's a good idea. I don't know if the other countries of Latin America are going to play along with that, but I think this is what it takes, because
I think they will, but they're going to play hardball.
Yeah.
And they should.
I mean, but this goes back to what we just talked before. Like, you cannot stop migration. Like, the best thing you can do is try to redistribute it, guide it, and let's see how it is going. Like, so instead of Chile doing like, okay, look, everybody's coming here. How about, hey, Colombia, hey, Argentina, hey, Uruguay, how about help us out here a bit? Like, why don't you open your doors for that? And they were just like, I'm not even going to talk to any of them guys. I'm just going to shut down my borders and put some tanks on there so nobody comes in. So that clearly didn't work, you know?
No, I mean, it's very short-sighted. I think that's the I think if I could say anything about Chile in general with like politics and a lot of the Latin American countries that we're seeing, is a lot of short-sightedness when it comes to immigration. Well, just the world, I feel like, say for some European countries, the short-sightedness of the issues on immigration.
Right.
You doing what you do with tanks in the northern border is not going to stop immigration. Even if it does right now, what's going to happen 2 years from now? Right. What's going to happen 10 years from now? You can't stop it. You should be investing that money that you're using for those tanks and everything into figuring out better ways to incorporate these people, to safely have these people in the country contributing to the country.
It's absolutely, I mean, it's political,
because they're bringing skills and jobs. Right. I mean, that's just the history. It's called the history. It's like open up a history book. Migration has never been a bad thing for any country in the long run, ever.
It's a political powder keg, right? You know, they got to be careful with it. I'm not saying that they shouldn't do it, but I see the motivations behind that, because I mean, I just remember what happened like back in 2015 when our ex-chancellor Merkel, she was just like, we can do this, open the borders, and everybody's like, what are you doing? You know? And yes,
because people are scared, and fear is fear.
But like, you gotta say, like, there was a problem because it was just like too much in too little time going on, you know, like it totally collapsed. But that was on the government too. No, it's like you can at no point blame the migrants for that.
No, yeah, you don't have to go from 0 to 100. I'm not like advocating like, let's just open the borders, let everybody just flood in, and then no, like I think that money that we're investing in tanks or whatever could be invested in people who have actually done for a living researching like migration and how other countries are doing it. Bring in people from different countries who have these skills that can be like, this is the way that you can do it that's safe. This is the amount of people you can bring in per day.
How you can build
this is the way that you can do this. Right. Shut the fuck up. Here's how you no, but that's literally what the Chilean government was investing in. How do we build bigger tanks? Like, what was like
Venezuelan engineers? Like, I know how.
Yeah, we'll help you build those tanks
better
against
border
our own people. Oh my god! But there's ways to do this. Like, it's not insane to think like there's ways. We have the technology. It's 2022 to like safely place people into the country, incorporate them, and to use their skills. Use their benefits. I'm not saying like, let's make sacrifices for immigrants in our country, you know, is going to be bad, but it's better because it's morally better. No, I don't think that at all. I think using their skills, taking them into the country is a benefit. Like, have them.
Which also brings me to the whole part of the solutions that I wanted to talk about. I think this is something what's his name, Berrios said, who was like the Jesuit priest who just turned down a position that Boric offered him, not in the government, but whatever. He's kind of like a prominent figure. And he was also like, look, like the most obvious solution here is just to open the border. I mean, not the willy-nilly, like, of course, there's got to be a process there, but just in principle, open the border, bolster the administrative infrastructure to fast-track immigrants to obtaining legal status and work permits, as well as streamline the validation process for foreign diploma, especially Venezuelan ones, you know? And, you know, because since migration can barely be stopped, they might as well just formalize it. You know, that's the thing. So this way, they know who's coming into the country, will nip the human trafficking endeavor in the bud. They won't have to work illegally, undercutting local workers' wages and thereby fueling anti-immigrant sentiments, but at the same time contributing to the society by paying taxes and being provided a safe work environment, because they have to adhere to the to the work code, labor code, whatever code, safety standards.
The safety code, the standards, because
said,
look, if you're making people get contracts because they're legal here, if they have contracts, they now have to pay taxes. They have to pay into their IFAP. They have to pay into the public system. If they don't have a contract because they can't get one, I can guarantee you these people just want to be here legally.
Oh yeah.
But they do not have an avenue to do it. It's not, I don't know an immigrant that's like, I want to be here. There are so many reasons why it's impossible for them to be able to reach that. Because if you are an immigrant in this country and you have a contract here, even if you're like me and you're still in trámite with your visa, I still have to pay into the public system every single month. And I still have to pay my taxes every single month. And that's going towards Chile. Imagine how many more people being able to contribute to the public system would help Chile.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we just said before, they don't want to be working on the black market. They want to be like legal here because they would have to deal with like, shitty wages, with all the hate from the co-workers who just being like, they're Turker gerbs, and then also not being provided a safe work environment because
but also you want to have a safe job for your family. You don't want to be out there thinking you could die when you have 2 kids at home and a husband or whatever. Like,
right. And as you just said, most of the immigrants here, like they have a high level of education than the average Chilean. So, that's the thing. Though actually, this might change.
And most of them can speak English.
Yeah. This might
as an English
change,
teacher.
Yeah, but this might change a bit in the future now because I think we've mentioned it in the last part. Like the first wave of immigrants, especially from Venezuela, were more like the better educated people, and now
because they had the resources to come here.
Yeah, no, which I'm not saying turn them back. I'm just saying like basically the average education level of the average migrant is
right. The average Chilean migrant then is way less educated than the average.
Right.
I mean,
now, also, just one last thing here, like since we've been talking about anti-immigrant sentiments, like I do have to take up the cudgel for the Northerners in a little bit because someone pointed out in an interview that I read, they said in the North, we know probably better than anyone how to coexist with different cultures, because we've been sharing spaces with Peruvians and Bolivians for decades now. So that kind of makes sense to me. So basically, I would say that a lot of these anti-immigrant protests that erupted, that were not so much because the people were inherently xenophobic, but because they were absolutely overwhelmed by the situation and action of the Chilean government. And they just looked to like, where can I take this out? Who can I take this out on?
Anytime you're pushed to your limits, you're fighting over water, you're fighting over research, fighting over what? Anytime you're pushed to your limits, then you're going to get desperate. That's like, it's like people like, why do people sell drugs if they're educated? It's like when you're pushed to your limit because you have no other way out, or you used to live in a little house that you could barely provide for your family. Now there are 16 people with a tent outside of your home, and that vegetable stand that used to have food now doesn't have any vegetables because now you have to share with 16 people who are not legal here. It's going to bring out a bad side in you.
Yeah, that happens.
Right?
To me.
When those
every time I'm stressed, I just kick a puppy. I'm not proud of it, but it would happen.
Yeah, I mean, if I try to go get a completo one more time and somebody's like, no, es un completo, es un perro caliente, because they're from Venezuela, I swear to God. No, I'm just kidding. I don't
care. These people need to learn our ways.
These people need to know it's called a completo, not a perro caliente. How dare you?
Right.
No.
So yeah, but I thought it was actually a pretty good point, because I think if any region in Chile is absolutely multicultural, I mean, with the exception from Santiago maybe, but then again, Santiago is so densely populated.
Oh man, Santiago is a different animal there.
Yeah, and also like in some parts of town
we divide up ourselves. It's like lots of metropolitan cities that divide themselves. Oh, look, there's Chinatown. It's cool as long as the Chinese stay in Chinatown. It's like all that kind of bullshit.
Exactly. So I think a lot of like in the north, there are a lot of towns where basically Chileans, Peruvians, Bolivians just basically live door to door next door. They know how to get along. They can appreciate the different cultural influences of their neighbors. And I get that, I think it's a good point to saying, it's like, look, like we know how to integrate, like we know this kind of thing, but we cannot handle the situation right now. We need the government to step in.
And that is the government that needs to step in, because those people were already desperate.
Yeah.
Those people, if they thought probably where they would be better off in Peru or somewhere else, they probably would have moved too, because they're like, what was it last time you like spoke about the statistics? It was like 99.9 were What?
You're missing me slinging numbers at you already?
Yeah, I missed them already. Missing your numbers. Boy, I miss those numbers. Those numbers do me good. Okay, anyway. I mean, like, so many of those people are just already in dire straits with how they're living. And
Great
now
point,
let's say that, like, I don't even know if they don't have access to health, and then all of a sudden the very few meager things they had access to are gone. They're desperate. And that is where the government needs to step in, and hopefully where the Boric administration will really try to kind of support these places, not just support the immigrants there, but they need to support the people that already live there, because they've been fucked over by being ignored all this time too. And I think that's also a fear. Like, okay, you're focusing on this migration stuff in the north, but what about me? What about me?
Actually, that's a good point you bring up. And sorry for being very cultural centric again, because this is something that also happened in Germany. Somebody, I don't know who said that, but it was also a very interesting point. Because that was also happening during the migration crisis in 2015. And there was this one politician, or I don't know who he was, but he was just like, look, everybody's talking about integration. What about integrating us? I'm from East Germany. Like, we have been waiting for some proper integration for the last 30 years. Like,
sure,
this is not happening. I was like, that is actually a pretty good point, because there are still parts of your own population who have been neglected, or are actually,
because the privileged
are culturally absolutely different, because in the case of Eastern Germany, that was a completely different culture back then. So, like,
yeah, I mean, it's like Native Americans in the US. It's like Black people.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's because the privileged class are white, and so they're not thinking about the fact that there's these other internal problems as well. And like, look, we don't have to just focus, like, we're focusing on this podcast, obviously, on the migration crisis, because that's what the topic is today. But you don't have to just be like, oh, it's one or the other. No, dude, it doesn't have to be just one or the other.
Oh, God.
You can focus on this migration crisis, and you can also help these people out who are desperate and trying to survive. Yeah. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
That's just the worst case of whataboutism that I've heard lately. Why don't you help your own people? Like,
why don't you help your own people? Well, we can do both of these things, you motherfucker. Like, we it's 2022. We have alien phone technology stuff, billionaires sending rockets into space. We can do more than one thing. We can handle our own people and help migrants, like, at the same time.
Man, I want to get my hands on this
we have the technology. I mean, it's basically everything is alien phone tech. Like, I don't know.
It's magic.
Everything is magic now. We can do this. We have the magic, okay, in our pockets and on our faces. I have glasses on. That's technology from like 200 years ago. We can do this now. Like,
I think whatever professional credibility we might have built up throughout the last hour, we just lost it.
You know what? I've never called myself a professional. If you are, what Piñera loves for me to say, if you're just now tuning in, if this is your first episode of us, we are not professionals. We're just two people who love Chile, who really like reading about politics, who are talking about it, and hope you enjoy it.
That's right.
And that's it. And enjoy alien technology.
Right. And that's pretty much all I have about this whole topic. I don't know if you have anything to add here.
No, I'm good. I think I said everything I wanted to say, but it was a good topic. And like, look, we know this is a developing topic, so we do have a new section every we might do part 3 in the future, maybe. But we also are going to keep you guys updated in our news sections about what's happening with this. I think there's going to be a lot of changes with the new administration. There already has. I mean, Siches went to the north and she had to stop her speech because there was gunfire. First day. Like her first big day, and then she had to stop. Did they ever find out what happened?
It was just like gunshots in the air, but there was like this interview they had with I don't know, was a governor, was some local authority figure who was also, from what I can tell from his last name, he was also like Mapuche, and he was like, that wasn't really well prepared, because like what she should have done is, like, she should have basically sat down with I don't know if that's the correct way to say tribal chief. I'm just going to go out on a limb here, and basically, or with a representative of the Mapuche community, just to hash things out and basically, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do this and this, and those are the times. Apparently, they didn't do that, and he was like, look, this is an issue that all of the governments had, because there has been this ignorance towards cultural differences, as we just talked about, within your own country, because the Mapuche is a completely different people, So you have to respect,
and hopefully they'll learn from that. situation. All I know is last time we were talking, we were like, she should go there faster because I think initially there was a plan to like get 20th. Some feet wet and go up to the north, and then it was like, no, now, and then she went now, and then this happened. So
no,
learning.
Hold on. That was in the south. She went to Timo Quiqui.
Yeah.
Right.
Directions are hard for me. I'm directionally challenged.
We're mixing topics here.
It's
kind of germane.
She went. Okay, yeah. And she wasn't doing the migration stuff. She was doing indigenous stuff. Yeah. Okay.
Civil War, indigenous stuff.
Whatever. But she was supposed to go to the north. When is she going to the north? She's supposed to go to the north soon.
Yes.
We'll keep you updated.
She's supposed to go on the 20th if memory serves. Actually, now that you mention it, I also like conflated these two things. But yeah, she has been up
again. So much is happening right now in Chile. Like hour to hour, things are changing. And it was like she was supposed to go to the north, but then she went to the south, and now she's in and I was like, when she was there were gunshots. So I was like, oh, she was in the north, and it's like. So if we need to correct ourselves, we will do so in upcoming episodes. Yeah. So it wasn't that.
Yeah, well, let's hope we don't have to talk about gunshots in the north,
Yeah. Well, also, it doesn't help that Pinguino, our fact checker, is not currently with us right now. I mean, he's not dead. He's just he's been very he's no longer with us. No. He's been really busy lately, so he has to edit post edit, and typically he's the person who has all the facts and knowledge of the updated stuff and fact checks us. So he just has to edit it out.
Penguins hibernate? Or wouldn't it be like
no
veronate, summernate, because they're like
just stand there while they almost freeze to death while the winds whip around them. Like men.
Yeah, that sounds like
because the male penguins typically do that.
Yeah,
protect the eggs. It's super cute. It's very Mandalorian. Anyway, so we love you guys. We hope you enjoyed the episode. If you have any other specific questions about migration, like you can always message us on one of our formats, join the Patreon, get in on the discourse. Maybe we can have like a discoursion of what's going on. That was good, wasn't it?
Discord.
I like discoursion.
Yeah.
It's better.
Yeah.
But so thanks for tuning in, you guys. We love you, and we'll be back in a couple weeks. So when in doubt,
Gringo out.
Bye.
Bye.
The Chile Today podcast is produced and edited by Podcast Pinguino Diego Rivera, and it is starring Leonard Kluge and Bethany Francis.
Oh, but one of these days I just want you to not butcher my name. Leonard Kluge, you mean?
Leonard Kluge. Bye!